Hello, my name is Zachariah with Old Man Gaming, and in this case, Axiom Games LLC. Super excited, ladies and gentlemen. This is going to be a second episode of our system tours that we're doing. That basically, I'm going to go over the game with you. I'm going to give you an idea of how to play. I'm going to anybody who's on the fence as to whether they want this system or not, they can kind of watch these tours and get an idea if this is the game for them or not. So last time we did character creation, we created Mr. Example right here on an index card. That's right, it takes less than 15 minutes to do a character, and you can do it on an index card front and back. For all you game masters who need quick NPCs, it's easy in this game. But that's not what we're talking about today. I urge you to go back and check that out first, but what we're talking about today is basic play. We're not going to go over to combat. We're going to go over just the simple, basic play of like skill checks and how your stats work in game. We'll do combat probably next time. So basic play right off the bat. The thing I want people to keep in mind is there's no negative modifiers in this. Overall, there are negative things that will affect your modifier, but your single mod, so to speak, is always going to be positive, and it's going to be adding to a d20. You need a d20, and that's it. You also need some tokens to keep track of momentum, and that's where we're going to start. We're going to start on momentum today. So what is momentum? You start with your charisma tokens in momentum, and you can never have more than your perception times 3 in momentum stored up. You gain momentum every time you do a skill that you initiate. You succeed a skill check, whether contested or non-contested, that you initiate. We'll get into that, the difference in a second. But momentum is kind of the basis of all your builds. It allows you to do extra attacks, allows you to use your perks. It also allows you to lower difficulties, reroll rolls that you don't like. Momentum is kind of the basis of how well you're doing in the game, and the better your character is doing, the more versatility they have in the actual, scenes, so to speak. I want you also to keep in mind that Game Masters have momentum, which we will talk about in a little bit. But they do have momentum that they can spend to negatively impact you, to make the scene a little bit tougher on you. And they get momentum when you fail rolls. Not rolls that were initiated by the Game Master, but rolls that you chose to initiate. I keep talking about what are roles that you choose to initiate versus roles that you don't. Well, we're going to get into that first, I think, before we even get into the stats of it. Because the idea behind single mod is that you're role-playing with every role. That the stats are coming out of your role-playing and then helping you role-play. So the idea behind it is Game Masters, and this is specifically for the Game Masters, you're not going to want to go crazy with giving people roles. You're only going to want to hand out a role when somebody absolutely has to react to it, because when you hand out a role to a player, that player cannot gain a momentum for it. However, when the player initiates a role, they can. What do I mean the difference is? So let's say your character, let's say Mr. Example here, he's our linguist at level 2. He's been captured, and there's 2 bad guys talking about him, but they're speaking in a different language. Now, the proper way to do it in single mod is the Game Master should just describe the scene, and then if the player wants to, the player can go, I would like to attempt a linguist roll to see if I can't make out what they're hearing, or maybe it's a language that I have heard before. So then they make their roll. You assign your difficulties. We'll get into all the nuts and bolts of it in a second, and then if they pass, they get a momentum. If they fail, the Game Master gets momentum. Now, the wrong way to do it would be the Game Master is like, hey, they're speaking in a language, give me a linguistics roll, which is how other games kind of want you to do things. In this game, you should only be giving those rolls. Only be giving those rolls when a person absolutely needs those rolls, has to do those rolls to either further storyline or stay alive. Such as... another good example. Here's a good example of when a Game Master should be giving out the roll. Player is running down the street, right? Trapdoor opens under player, okay? Player has to make a roll, period. That player has to make a roll to see if they catch themselves. Maybe agility, acrobatics is what I would use. So the Game Master has to give out a roll to allow them to keep afloat. That's not a I choose to get out of this with whatever. It's when the game itself, when the game master is forcing you into that situation, is when the roll needs to come from the game master. And in those cases, you can't gain momentum from it. Think about it this way. If you're aggressive in the situation for the roll, you're getting a momentum if you pass. The game master's getting a momentum if you fail. If you're passive in it, you're not getting anything. And the game master's not getting anything. Again, the idea behind this is let the game masters put the puzzles in place so that the players can then figure out how to crack those codes and use their characters who are better at things than they are to accomplish those goals. But what is the rolls? What's the rolls? What happens when you do it? Well, we're going to be talking specifically about non-contested rolls because of the fact that we're not talking about combat. There are contested rolls that aren't combat specific. I'll allow the game master to make those choices and whatnot. But a non-contested roll is when you are taking on a difficulty, when you're taking on a level of difficulty to try and pass the task. It's not another person who's actively trying to stop you. Keyword actively there. So when you're doing a non-contested roll, the first thing you need to do is either call out, if you're calling it out as a player, you're either going to call out the skill and the attribute you want to do. Well, you're going to call out the skill you want to do. Then the game master is going to decide what attribute's going to be used, and then you're going to add those two things together. All right. Once you add those two things together, you're going to have your single mod, period. There is, of course, certain things to keep in mind, but overall, you're going to have your single mod. Now, the game master has to assign a difficulty. 5 is easy, 10 is hard, expert is 15, and improbable is 20. And then you can't assign anything higher than a 20 unless the actual specific modifiers deal with that, right? Then, on a very basic level, you take your d20 and you roll it plus a skill to beat it. So we're going to use the example we already used. Mr. Example's been captured. He's in prison. There's 2 guards talking. They're talking in a different language. So I would say, hey, Game Master, I want to try and use Linguist to try and figure out what they're saying. The Game Master looks at my mental skills and thinks, I think it's going to be a perception stat because you're trying to kind of glean the information. You're trying to be aware of what they're saying, sort of thing. So my perception is a 2. My Linguist is a 2. That gives me a single mod of +4. The Game Master then says, you know what? They're speaking pretty fast, but you probably heard this before, so we're going to make it hard. So difficulty's a 10. So now I have to roll over a 10 with a d20 +4. So let's see if I do it. I roll an 8 on the die. Bring that up so you guys can see it. 8 on the die +4 gives me a 12. 12 beats a 10. I have accomplished the goal. I can kind of tell how they're saying. What's interesting here, though, is it doesn't really stop there. I would also gain a momentum for that, which we're going to talk about expenditures of momentum in a second. But the other thing is, too, how much you beat it by is how well you do. So for every 5 points you beat it by is another kind of step level on how good you're doing. So let's say my 12, so my 12 is there, I can kind of understand what they're saying and glean the conversation, and that's about it. Let's say I had scored 16, so that's above 5 over it, I would hit another step level. Now the Game Master's like, all right, you actually can speak this language relatively fluently from here on out, and then he's going to be telling me what people are saying in that language. You guys kind of see how that works? So then let's look at momentum, the effects of momentum on things. So let's say, right, that my 12 was actually a 9. I failed the roll, okay? That's a big bummer. I don't want to fail this roll. I want to figure out what they're doing, and I've got 3 momentum. Well, you can spend 2 momentum to re-roll the roll. There we go. Now I got a 10 +4. Now I'm up to a 14, and I pass. In another case, before you roll, On a non-contested roll, you can spend a momentum to lower the difficulty by 2. So he put that 10 out there, right? 10 difficulty. I might say, you know what? I want to up my chances. I've got the +4, kind of make it a sure thing without spending too much momentum. I'll spend 1 momentum, drop that to an 8. Okay, so now the difficulty is an 8, and I'm trying to roll above it. You guys see where that is going? It's that simple. It's quick. It's easy. It's to the point. It gets you done. Now, again, on the rolls that you initiate, you always get a momentum. Those momentum points don't stop there. They really help you in combat. They really help you in other stuff. But in addition to that, and we'll talk about this in the advancement system, unspent momentum points actually give you experience points at the end. So there is a reason you really have to think about every momentum you spend. Now let's finish this video off by talking about Game Master momentum. Game Masters earn momentum every time you miss a roll you elect to do, or an attack. An attack is always an elective roll. We're going to get into that in the combat video sometime down the road. Defense always passive, attack always elective. So in this specific case, Game Masters can gain momentum whenever you decide to use a skill and fail it. When a Game Master gets momentum, first of all, a Game Master starts with 2 momentum for every player at the table. So if I've got 3 of you, I've got 6 momentum right off the bat. There's no upward limit to the amount of momentum I can get and store. Game Masters, try not to be too rough, though. Momentum can force a player to reroll once. Unlike the whole player thing, who can keep spending 2 to reroll, I can't do that. I can make you reroll once, and then I'm done. I can also spend a momentum to give my NPCs extra attacks on a 1-for-1 basis. That's a whole combat thing. We'll get into that later. And then I can also use momentum to modify NPC attacks with effects, much like how the players will in combat. Again, both things that will come back up in the combat video when we do it. In addition to that, my Game Master momentum is what I spend for my PC's perks, okay? The perks that are on my player character, my NPCs, that's what I'm spending. I'm spending my Game Master momentum. It's a collective kind of thing. So yeah, that's it. That's the base play. That's how easy it is. I just explained everything to you in 12 minutes. I mean, there are some ups and downs. There are a couple of things in there which we're going to get into. But overall, that's it. That's all you want to do. If you want to do a contested non-combat roll, you can have them roll against each other with the single mod and see how much they beat each other by. It's that simple. That is this game down to a T, and everything comes off that just single mod roll. Whatever you're doing, you're rolling once, you're adding a stat and a skill, and that's it. Like, yes, there will be weapons and other small modifiers, but overall, that's it. That's what you do with this game. So it's nice, it's simple, it's snappy, it's quick. That's base play. So that's it. That's our second video. If you want to get this game, please go to itch.io, search single mod in the search bar, and this game is only $6. $6. So if it sounds even remotely interesting to you, go buy it. Support a one-man team, basically. And I'm very excited about this game. I'm very excited at coming out. It's already on the wild, so just go get a copy. Last thing, we will be back with a combat tutorial. That'll probably be the longest video I can think of. But we'll go over combat. We'll go over the basics of combat. We'll go over some of the special rules of combat, all the fun stuff that goes into combat. But this right here is the basic. It's still just going to be a mod D20 versus a mod D20. Done. All right. So, like I said, itch.io, search single mod in the search bar, only $6. And other than that, keep it locked here. We're going to continue to stream this game, continue to advertise for this game, and continue to do system tours for you guys to check out. So I'll see you guys in the next one.